A commission of inquiry into taxi violence, fatalities and instability in this industry in Gauteng has finalized its investigation, and the final report was released this week by Gauteng Transport MEC Jacob Mamabolo. Now, these findings were alarming, as it turns out that local taxi associations are a law unto themselves. We were told that they control who gets to join them, they charge exorbitant fees without accounting for them, and they're also at least partially responsible for some of the saturation in the routes that often leads to violence. To talk us through these findings, at least a perspective on them, let's bring in the national spokesperson for SANTACO, that's Thabiso Molelekwa, who joins us via our video link. Thabiso, thanks for your time and welcome to the program. So, associations coming out of this report, not necessarily smelling like a bed of roses. Your reaction?
Well, good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to the viewers. Yes, we have received the report. We're considering it. I think the NEC of Santaco next week will make a pronouncement on that. But maybe just based on what you are saying, what we could comment on is that indeed there are problems in as far as the oversaturation is concerned. And while there is some share of blame on our side, but in the main, government, particularly here in Gauteng, has been quite a contributory factor to the oversaturation. Remember, taxis get oversaturated because there is a license that is issued, which is government responsibility. And when that is done, really, there is little that we can do.
Yeah, but the picture being painted here, from my understanding, is that associations, the very same associations who then cry foul, are actually fueling some of the unrest within the industry itself. Do you feel that's a fair framing at this stage?
Well, it's debatable, and as I've indicated, Ayanda, there is some share of blame that we take. But remember, the associations or the leadership of associations do give advice in some instances to government on whether or not licenses should be issued. But also the fact that there is conflict of interest in some government officials. This was also issued, recorded in the 2016 report by the provincial legislature. That is also a contributory factor because some of these licenses cannot be accounted for. Now, the point here is, yes, we do know that there is a problem in terms of some monies that are being collected that are not being accounted for, and there is an administrative issue that must be dealt with. But in the main, there needs to be a collaborative effort between government and the industry to ensure that these problems are addressed and resolved.
That has been said for years now, Thabiso. I'm sure you'll agree with me. The calls for collaboration are ringing from both sides of the spectrum, so to speak. Let me ask this. Do you feel associations have in some ways created a problem that is now out of their control too? The sense I'm getting is that nobody's actually able to rein anyone in the industry, and that in part is why we're here.
Look, firstly, I agree with you. That has been said for years. There is the Advocate Thabiso Molelekwa Commission in the Western Cape that was investigating taxi violence in the Western Cape. Nothing has happened to those recommendations. There was a subsequent Kempempe commission. Nothing has happened. Now we've got another commission, and the question of whether anything would happen remains to be seen. So that remains largely your biggest problem. Now, the thing is, the industry has always been willing to deal with the issues that are confronting it, and this is why, even at the National Taxi Lekgotla, one of the issues that came out strongly was the industry has lost total confidence in the ability of law enforcement to resolve conflict in the industry. And that is why there was a strong call that we need to have a specialized structure that does not even report to SAPS that would deal with taxi violence in the country, because there is a huge belief among industry players that some of these police are conflicted, some of them are connected, and some of them, they see this conflict happening and let it on. So it becomes a problem because even those with information are afraid to volunteer that information so that we are able to deal with the issues.
Talk to me a bit more about what the structure would look like, because you're actually right. Part of the findings of this commission, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that some officials are in bed with the wrongdoers within the industry, and that further muddies the water. So if this is the idea, bring it home for us a bit more. What does it actually look like?
Well, the idea is, for instance, that one of the options that should be considered would be the structure to report directly to the security cluster and not be able to report to the police or the intelligence or whatever the case is, but directly to the principals that are charged with security in the country, so that the security, the protection of people who are able to work and assist, even those who are not guilty as such, are able to be protected. But for as long as we expect the police to be able to deal with violence, taxi violence in particular in the country, we would have problems. I mean, there was a man about 6 years ago who was a police officer who was caught in KZN, who was a hitman for taxi operators. So the involvement of the police is quite deep, to the point that if indeed the recommendations, the implementation of the recommendation to be left to the SAPS, I can assure you now you will have a very passive involvement of the industry in this regard.
So what happens now? I mean, as you've rightly pointed out, the track record insofar as implementing the recommendations of various inquiries over the years leaves a lot to be desired. What does SANTACO believe ought to happen next?
The first thing that we believe in is what we have requested during the National Taxi Law Hotline, is for government to give the taxi industry limited regulatory powers. And the minister has agreed to that. So that process will be going on. And the reason why we want that is, one, we want all these perpetrators who are found to be guilty to have their operating licenses revoked, so that they are no longer able to have a situation that we currently have, where you've got operators who have been sentenced, but they are still having taxis operating while they're in jail. So the violence continues either way. So one of the things is that once people are being sentenced, their licenses are being discontinued, and then we're able to clean the system from within.
Right. It certainly is a situation that's going to need even more urgent attention, considering just what's at stake and how many people rely on this service. Thanks very much for your take on this. Really appreciate it. Thabiso Molelekwa speaks for SANTACO. Thanks very much indeed.